Megaprojects are large-scale complex projects which usually involve massive capital investment and take years to build. They're often in sectors like infrastructure, energy, or transportation. Examples include building new cities, airports, power stations, high-speed rail networks, or massive buildings. In today's video, let's look at some overly ambitious ideas that made no practical sense and so failed. Everything from sinking man-made islands to cities no one wanted to live in, to giant abandoned buildings or futuristic transportation solutions that made no sense. First up, we have Dubai's man-made islands. In the 1990s, the government of Dubai decided to diversify away from its reliance on oil to building a service and tourism-oriented economy. In 1991, there was just one skyscraper in Dubai. There were 6 in 1998, and today there are 265. The property development boom around the turn of the millennium turned Dubai into one of the fastest growing cities in the world. Apparently, 25% of the construction cranes in use worldwide are operating in Dubai today. They built the world's tallest building, the world's largest shopping mall, the world's largest fountain, and the world's tallest hotel. They're apparently developing a theme park called Dubai Land, which is planned to be twice the size of Walt Disney World, but significantly less woke. One of the problems Dubai identified in becoming a tourist hotspot was its short coastline, especially if it was going to become a beach resort. They built their first artificial island for the Burj Al Arab Hotel, where construction began in 1994. They then laid out plans for 3 palm-shaped islands, an archipelago of islands shaped like a map of the world, and another archipelago called the Universe in the shape of the Sun, Moon, Milky Way, and Solar System. Construction on the Palm Jumeirah began in 2001. From above, it looks like a palm tree inside a circle. Unlike the Burj Al Arab Island, this was built entirely from sand and rocks, with no concrete or steel used. A megaproject wouldn't be a megaproject without a monorail, so of course there's a 3.4-mile-long monorail running down the center of the palm, and the leaves are filled with homes and hotels, creating a sort of suburb in the ocean. By late 2007, most of the properties were available to be handed over to their new owners, right as the global financial crisis hit, causing Dubai property prices to fall by around 60%. A list of notable residents on Wikipedia includes a who's who of fugitives, like a sanctioned Russian oligarch, 2 notable narcotics traffickers, and a few international money launderers. My takeaway is that it's probably not wise to get into an argument with your neighbours on the Palm Jumeirah. In 2009, it was reported that NASA satellite data showed that the palm was sinking into the sea at a rate of about an inch every 5 years, which isn't great. The outer breakwater unfortunately acts as a barrier, preventing the water within the palm from moving, which caused it to become stagnant and to stink. While that doesn't sound great either, on the positive side, it keeps the plague of jellyfish that surround the outside of the island from getting in. And yeah, that's because there seems to be a plague of jellyfish, and really, a plague of anything is usually not considered good. According to a 2009 New York Times article, when you turn the faucets on in the hotels on the Palm, only cockroaches come out, so you probably shouldn't do that. It's probably best if you bring a bottle of water along with you. After launching the project, the developer, who must have no fear of the drug traffickers, money launderers, and various other island mobsters, increased the number of residential units on the island, reducing the space between them to make up for some of their losses, which didn't make the home buyers happy. There were other problems reported too, like human waste being dumped in the water, not to scare off the jellyfish, but because most of Dubai's development went ahead without proper sewage facilities, meaning that it has to be trucked out of the city, where the trucks reportedly wait up to 16 hours in line to deposit it in the city's only sewage treatment plant. I should note that this is the most successful of Dubai's man-made islands. The others are considered failures. Before I get to them, let me tell you about this week's video sponsor, Delete Me. Delete Me is a subscription service that acts on your behalf to force data brokers to delete any of your personal data that they're storing to sell online. Data brokers collect huge amounts of personally identifiable information on individuals that can include social security numbers, birthdays, past and recent addresses, information about your relatives, and much, much more, which they then sell online to who knows who. Data brokers are legally required to delete any information they store on you if you ask, but unfortunately there are hundreds of data brokers and they don't make it easy. It could take forever to contact them all. I use Delete Me to reach out to the hundreds of data brokers on my behalf to request the deletion of my personal data and to deal with any objections. I got a full report back showing where my data was removed from. With a yearly subscription, Delete Me tracks to make sure that your data is not re-added to their lists. Get 20% off Delete Me US and UK consumer plans when you go to joindeleteme.com/Boyle and use promo code Boyle at checkout. The Palm Jebel Ali is another artificial palm-shaped island in Dubai. It began construction in 2002 and was supposed to be completed by mid-2008. It was badly located outside of the city in an industrial area near the port. The project was put on hold when real estate prices started collapsing in 2007, and it was relaunched last year. It was originally supposed to be 50% larger than the Palm Jumeirah. The homes on this island, when built, will be arranged to spell out a poem by Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashad Al Maktoum, reading, "Take wisdom from the wise, it takes a man of vision to ride on water. Not everyone who rides a horse is a jockey. Great men rise to greater challenges." He's not really a poet by trade. I think it's much more of a hobby for him, and I'm sure he does other things which he's really good at. Last May, the Palm Jebel Ali was relaunched with the announcement that it would now be even bigger, twice the size of the Palm Jumeirah, which hopefully means twice as many jellyfish too. The project aims to house 35,000 families, and they say something about a master plan and renewable energy, which I'm sure is great. A mega project wouldn't be a mega project without some master plan and environmental claims. A third palm-shaped island was partially built. Construction was halted. It was then renamed twice, and the new master plan, that's not my term, it's theirs, seems to involve it no longer being shaped like a palm. Instead, it'll be shaped like whatever it looks like now. There will be 80 hotels on this thing, and no official opening date has been announced yet. And I'm not sure that it really matters anyhow. They're all slowly sinking into the sea. Allegedly. The most disastrous of the artificial island projects in Dubai, other than the ones that were quite wisely cancelled before construction, is the World Archipelago, which cost around $10 billion to construct. It's supposed to look like a map of the world, and it kind of does if all of the countries got chewed up and spat into the ocean. Unlike the Palm projects, it doesn't even have a monorail or a road. If you buy an island, you then need to brave the jellyfish-infested waters in a boat. A street called Raining Street was planned as part of the Heart of Europe project, where artificial rainfall would occur whenever the outdoor temperature exceeded 27 degrees centigrade, with the objective being to make a close copy of the southern European climate. The initial plan was that utilities would be routed underwater, with pumping stations providing fresh water to each of the islands. Power was supposed to be provided through underwater cables too. None of this was ever installed, and buyers instead have to provide their own power using diesel generators. Wastewater and refuse systems are the buyer's problem too. Or at least it's more the buyer's problem than it is on the palm-shaped islands. Construction of the 300 islands that make up the world began in 2003 before being halted due to the global financial crisis. 60% of the islands were then sold, as is, to private contractors in 2008, and development on most of the islands has gone nowhere. The world archipelago was initially pitched as the ultimate in exclusivity, which sounds about right, as there's nothing really more exclusive than being the only person there. There are, of course, claims that these islands are sinking into the sea too, which the developers say are wholly inaccurate. Now, not all of these islands are entirely abandoned. The world island called Lebanon was the first to offer a beach bar and sun loungers, and the resort was opened on the Argentina island in 2021, possibly meaning that the Dubai versions of Lebanon and Argentina have more successful economies than the actual Lebanon and Argentina. Okay, so next up on our list of failed mega projects, we have Golden Finance 117, which has the dubious honour of being the world's tallest abandoned building. Construction on the skyscraper, which was planned to be the 5th tallest building in the world, began in 2008 and was scheduled for completion in 2014. The building was designed to resemble a walking stick, which in a way all skyscrapers kind of resemble, but this one would have a diamond-shaped 3-story tall observation deck at the top, where people could eat, swim, and, oddly enough, play polo. I'm not really sure how the horses would get in and out, but that's not really my problem to deal with.
You're not taking that into the lift.
We have to. The stairs will kill him.
At the time of planning, the building was supposed to be the centerpiece of its developers' Golden Metropolitan scheme, a 1 square mile, high-end residential and business district about 5 miles from downtown Tianjin in China. The tower topped out in 2015 at a height of 1,957 feet tall. It has 128 stories above ground, with 117 of them intended for housing, hotel, and commercial space. The 117 occupiable floors gave the building its name. Construction began in 2008, but was halted twice. The first halt was in 2010 due to fallout from the global financial crisis. Work resumed in 2011 with the new estimated completion date of 2018. In 2015, the Chinese stock market bubble popped, and the developer shares fell 67%. They were forced to suspend construction later that year while they reorganized their finances. Golden Finance 117 failed for a number of reasons. The primary reason was its location in the outskirts of a secondary Chinese city, Tianjin, where the kind of people who could afford to live in a luxury building like this didn't live. The wealthy people who could afford to buy these apartments probably wouldn't want to relocate to the outskirts of Tianjin, so there was no real market for this building to begin with. The other problem was that the developer, Golden Properties, ran into significant financial difficulties after the 2015 Chinese stock market crash. In 2018, China passed a new regulation outlawing new buildings more than 1,640 feet tall. By this point, Golden Finance 117 was already more than 300 feet taller than the new regulations permitted. In 2016, the building drew a lot of media attention when a Russian couple filmed themselves climbing with no safety harnesses to the top of a construction crane on top of the building. There was a warning on screen in their video that viewers shouldn't attempt to imitate this. Now, I don't think that warning was aimed at me, as I've had a light bulb out for over a year in my house because I've been too lazy to stand up on a chair to change it. To be clear, I'm not afraid to stand on the chair, I just haven't got around to it, that's all. When the building was put up for sale a few years ago as part of the liquidation of the developer, Golden Metropolitan, it didn't attract much attention, and no attempts have been made to resurrect the building since 2018. Golden Finance 117 was simply a case of building a luxury skyscraper in a location that couldn't support the demand for such a property. Next on our list of failed mega projects, we have Forest City, Malaysia. There are at least 50 ghost cities in China where around 65 million properties are unoccupied. Chinese developers poured more concrete between 2011 and 2013 than was used in the United States throughout the entire 20th century. In the US, more than half of Americans invest in the stock market, and around 65% own property. In China, only around 7% of the population owns stocks, but around 90% have property investments. In the 2010s, as prices rose, Chinese citizens borrowed a greater multiple of their wealth than people did anywhere else in the world to invest in property. Chinese property developers didn't just build in China. The country's largest developer, Country Garden, unveiled Forest City in Malaysia in 2016, a $100 billion mega project under President Xi's Belt and Road Initiative. The Belt and Road Initiative, which is sometimes referred to as the New Silk Road, was launched in 2013 as one of the most ambitious infrastructure projects ever conceived. It was originally devised to link East Asia and Europe through physical infrastructure like roads and ports. It later expanded to Africa, Oceania, and Latin America, significantly broadening China's economic and political influence, while also allowing the country to diversify the investment of its vast foreign exchange reserves. In Malaysia, the plan was to build a futuristic, eco-friendly metropolis featuring vertical green spaces, surveillance and security drones, as that's what people seem to want, a golf course, water park, offices, bars, and restaurants. The city would be built on 4 man-made islands, of course, and the developer said that Forest City would eventually be home to nearly 1 million people. Now, I'm a little bit disappointed in this one, as I did a bit of Googling and can find no evidence of even plans for a monorail. I'm not sure that you should go straight to the surveillance and security drones without first building a monorail, but there were fortunately plans for solar roadways. A mega project just wouldn't really be a mega project without some sort of nonsense eco-transportation promise.
Solar freaking roadways!
In this picture, you can see what are quite possibly the vertical gardens, but it might also just be stuff growing on the outside of the abandoned buildings. It's sometimes hard to tell. To a pessimist, there are weeds in your gutters, while to an optimist, they're hanging gardens. Despite being marketed as an energy-efficient, ecologically sensitive, land-conserving, low-polluting offshore city, the development was built in the middle of a rank 1 environmentally sensitive area and destroyed coastal wetlands and a mangrove forest. I'm not sure if building an artificial island should be counted as land conserving, but I suppose we'll let them away with that one. BBC reporters who visited Forest City in 2023 described seeing a children's train that someone forgot to turn off doing endless loops around the abandoned shopping mall, playing head, shoulders, knees and toes in Chinese, despite there being no children inside. Residents told the reporters that they were desperate to escape the city, which they called a lifeless husk that quickly erodes the sanity of anyone trying to live there. They probably shouldn't put that in their real estate listing. Only one of the 4 man-made islands originally planned was ever built. The plan was that when the first apartments were sold out, the next 3 islands would be built. In 2014, almost as soon as construction began, problems arose. Construction was halted for months after officials in Singapore, a few miles across the strait from Malaysia, raised concerns about the environmental destruction. The real problem came 2 years later, however, when China, fearing the collapse of its currency, stopped citizens from buying property abroad. While built in Malaysia, Forest City was not built for Malaysians. It was instead built to be sold to Chinese property investors who had been priced out of buying apartments in China. The prices were way too high for Malaysians, and if the Chinese could no longer buy real estate abroad, there was no real market for Forest City. To make things worse, in 2018, Malaysia's Prime Minister restricted visas for Chinese buyers, citing his objection to a city built for foreigners. Next came the pandemic and then the bursting of the Chinese real estate bubble. Finally, in 2023, the one road to Forest City collapsed in a giant sinkhole. I don't believe this was caused by overuse. Local Malaysian authorities, who have a 40% stake in Forest City, made efforts to revive interest in the project over the last few years. They promised to turn it into a special financial zone with a tax deal for the family offices of ultra-wealthy investors, hoping to attract them. According to the BBC, the biggest draw is the area's duty-free status, and people travel to Forest City to buy cheap cigarettes and alcohol, and that's really the kind of tourists you want, the ones that'll travel long distances for cheap booze and cigarettes. They've also built attractions like a stairway on the beach, which is supposed to be a tourist attraction. Apparently, it's very Instagrammable. You know the way tourists will travel miles out into the middle of nowhere to take a photo on the stairs and hang out on the crocodile-infested beach. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the crocodiles, didn't I? Yeah, there's crocodiles. In fact, that sign on the beach near the Instagram stairs is there to warn you about the crocodiles. No wonder they call it the stairway to heaven. There's a good chance that you're not getting out of there alive. That photo might be your last Instagram upload. Sorry, we seem to have taken a bit of a dark turn here. It's not that bad. Let's see what the BBC has to say about the attractions of Forest City. Well, they say that on the beach you'll find piles of discarded alcohol bottles and pockets of local drinkers who provide the bulk of human activity in Forest City. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't sound great, but equally it won't sound entirely unfamiliar to anyone who's taken a day trip from London to Brighton. I'll tell you, the people of Brighton really like a can of special brew on the beach. The BBC says that when night falls, Forest City becomes pitch dark and the empty streets become really creepy. Okay, so it's a bit of a tough sell. Let's see if I can find a more uplifting mega project for the next one. Okay, so next up we have the Hyperloop. That'll be good. At least there won't be jellyfish and crocodiles everywhere. That's the good thing about the CGI-based mega projects. The designers can usually keep the wildlife out of them. The Hyperloop was reinvented by Elon Musk, a man whose hand gestures are so awkward that he had to put a special steering wheel in his cars. Back in 2013, when he wrote the 53-page long white paper on what he called a fifth mode of transport. Now, the idea of the vacuum train, which is what the Hyperloop is, has been around since at least 1799, when George Mendhurst patented an atmospheric railway that could convey people or cargo through pressurized or evacuated tubes. But Elon Musk also invented it in 2013. Musk's Hyperloop capsules were supposed to float on a bed of air within a vacuum tube, and the entire system was supposed to generate more power than it used through the use of solar panels on the outside of the tube. The first Hyperloop was supposed to run from Los Angeles to San Francisco, meaning that it would require a 400-mile-long airtight tube and pumps that could pull a 2 million cubic meter vacuum, which is 50 times the volume of the largest vacuum chamber ever built. Musk claimed that the pods would travel at twice the speed of an airplane and trips would cost $25 per ticket. Apart from the near impossibility of maintaining a vacuum tube that would be hundreds of miles long, the plans involved pods of 14 people launched every 2 minutes, which would involve rapidly repressurizing and depressurizing the tube as the pods were loaded. There are hundreds of videos on YouTube explaining why this system couldn't work. For example, if there was a small hole in the tube, the whole system would implode, killing everyone inside. And actually, almost everything you can think of that could cause problems in a vacuum train would not only cause problems, but the problems would kill all of the passengers, which is not really what they would want. Nonetheless, Hyperloops were announced for the United States, India, Saudi Arabia, Italy, and Canada, despite the whole idea having been thoroughly debunked by scientists and engineers from the day of its announcement. Hyperloop One managed to raise about $450 million from investors and build a small test track near Las Vegas. Another startup named Hyperloop TT secured $108 million in investment. According to Bloomberg, Hyperloop One employed more than 200 people at its peak, but laid them all off in December 2023 after failing to reinvent transit. Its biggest investor, Dubai Ports, apparently owns the remaining intellectual property. Carlo van de Weyer of the Technical University of Eindhoven described the Hyperloop as a very complicated solution in search of a problem that doesn't exist. He went on to say that putting money into a Hyperloop as a serious transportation system was a stupid idea from the beginning. The number of people that could be transported per Hyperloop tube would be tiny relative to conventional trains or airplanes. Well, the good thing is that people have now worked out that the whole idea made no sense whatsoever. After spending more than $500 million, the longest Hyperloop ever built was just 420 meters long, providing neither transportation nor a solution. Wait a minute, hold on. It's not over yet. I guess based on that huge success, Elon Musk announced just a month ago that he could build a tunnel from the United States to Europe with a Hyperloop in it and that it will be affordable. Well, as far as I'm concerned, there's no reason to doubt him. After all, he is successfully building a human colony on Mars. I believe the rockets will be leaving any day now. I'm sure that the Boring Company learned a lot from those small tunnels that they dug under a parking lot in Las Vegas, and I can't see how tunneling under the Atlantic Ocean would be any more complicated than that. The Atlantic Ocean doesn't ever get much deeper than about 5 miles. I'm actually a little bit surprised that no one's done it already. It's kind of crazy that people are getting in airplanes rather than digging a simple 5,000-mile long tunnel. Apparently, the boring machines that Musk has developed make bricks out of the soil that they dig so that they can actually be sold and make a profit from tunneling.
And then we're making bricks out of the dirt, and these are bricks that are made by compressing the dirt at extremely high pressures, adding a little bit of just a small amount of concrete, and you can have bricks that are rated for California seismic loads. And then these bricks, we actually think we can sort of sell the bricks for like 10 cents a brick or something like that. And then we're going to do some fun things like make life-size Lego kits with where you can like order a set and like build, anything. Like, I think we were like thinking of starting with the Egyptian pantheon.
Okay, so there are a few things that seem to sum up to being a bad mega project. Artificial islands may not work that well. New cities in the middle of nowhere where no one wants to live may not be a winner either. Skyscrapers in out-of-the-way areas don't seem to work that well. And until Elon has completed his tunnel to Europe, which is probably only a year or two away, I wouldn't bet on projects that involve a Hyperloop. Now, there's one project in Saudi Arabia, The Line, which combines pretty much all of these features. But as I said in my video last year, I'm actually a big believer in that project. And the respected journalist, Johnny Harris, even went out there a few months ago and filmed a bunch of dump trucks, which means that the project is definitely going ahead and that it will definitely be successful. If you haven't seen it yet, here's a link to my video on Neom The Line. Don't forget to check out our sponsor, Delete Me, using the link in the description. Have a great day and see you in the next video. Bye.